I've been thinking about this quote in the Talmud that I remember coming across years ago, and looking at the state of the world we're in today, the moral confusion, the situation in Israel. And I remember reading in Sanhedrin that I think it was Rabbah who said, let Moshiach come, let the Messiah come, but let me not see him come, like after my death. And it seems to suggest that he was anticipating some kind of events and something happening before Mashiach's arrival that he just didn't want to, witness or see or be part of. Do you have any sense of what it is that he's referring to?
Everything you read in the papers. The exact quote is, let Moshiach come, but I don't want to see it. See it. In other words, what I hear is going to happen, that's great, but I don't want to see it. To make the godliness that Mashiach will bring, to make it visible, to make it so clear like you're seeing it with your own eyes, that's too scary. Because what it takes is the complete and total disillusionment with everything else, so that the only thing left real is God. That's a scary proposition. And we're living through it.
Well, and Rabbah didn't want to see that? These are great Rabbanim. These are great sages. Would that not be a dream of theirs?
Yeah, it wouldn't be his own suffering, but watching the people suffer all this disillusionment, sensitive souls can't do it. I can be very happy that people are now totally disillusioned with secularism. But how painful is it for those people who live their lives with belief in secularism? And now to see it turn against them. It's like, all the people who went to that festival, all those young people who went to the festival, they were pro-Palestinians, all of them.
Sure.
Their highest ideal in life was to have Palestinians be their best friend.
Right. They dreamed of dancing alongside them.
Yes. And now to find out that your friends gave the Hamas your address and the layout of your house and the distance between your house and the synagogue. How painful is that? How embarrassing, how devastating. So those who are very democratic, those who are very socialistic, those who are very religious, every one of them has got ugly egg on their face.
And still, I see at times people just are not prepared to, still, even now, not prepared to let go. Getting even more worked up, actually.
Desperation. It's horrible to watch. So when the prophet predicted the total destruction of the world before Moshiach comes, he didn't mean physical destruction.
Which prophet are we talking about?
All of them. The prophecy that before Moshiach comes, there will be a huge war and there'll be dead bodies all over the place and no one to bury them. Horrible, horrible descriptions. Doesn't have to be physical. If you destroy a person's belief and view of the world, you've destroyed their world. Much worse than destroying their body. At least they gave their body for a cause, a noble cause.
Hmm.
But that your cause turned out to be ugly, that is so painful. Remember when the Vatican came out with a statement that Jews are not to be held
Exonerated.
responsible?
The 1962, the exoneration. I think it was 62. Yeah.
That was like, excuse me, that's it? You're exonerated. What about you? You've been killing us for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And all you say is, okay, you're exonerated now. How about, shed a little tear of regret?
Hmm.
How about a little humbled confession on your part? You've been killing Jews for 1,000 years, blaming them for the death of Jesus. And I say, oh, no, I guess you weren't responsible.
Right. It's like I once said, there was a member of parliament in the UK, a Christian, once said to me, we were meeting up and he said, Ollie, I've been studying all the anti-Semitism and oppression of Christians towards Jews for so many centuries. Even in this country, the blood libels actually started in England. And he just said, I just really want to just say how sorry I am. And it was really, really clearly very heartfelt, and it was quite moving. But I was thinking, it's not really for me to accept this apology. Who am I, living up in a liberal democratic England, living very comfortably as a Jew? Yeah.
I was speaking to a group of graduating ministers in a Baptist seminary. And this woman asked, what do you think of Christians? I really didn't like that question and preferred not to answer it. I said, would you like a polite answer or an honest answer? And she didn't appreciate the levity. She said an honest answer. I said, when I hear the word Christian, it still scares me. It's scary. You haven't been good to Jews. She was sobbing. Sobbing uncontrollably until the minister, the teacher of the class, urged her to say what she was thinking. And she finally pulled herself together and she said, I want to apologize for all the horrible things we did in the name of God. Your answer was way too generous. We weren't always good to Jews. What an understatement. She was sobbing. So there are some sincere regrets, but concerning the Vatican, if you sincerely regret it, can we have all the loot you took from the temple? Can we have it back now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no.
But specifically this point about, okay, so that's really interesting that you're saying that what Rabbah was, as a sensitive soul, what he didn't want to see was the collapse of everyone's gods and idols that would precipitate the Moshiach's coming. But
yeah,
I have, sorry,
not that it would be painful for him,
right? But so you're basically saying it's not about there's going to be this, not necessarily because he didn't want to see this great physical destruction, but there is textual evidence that talks about, for example, in the Zohar, it talks about the final exile of Ishmael, which we clearly are facing at the moment, the oppression. It says no exile will be as oppressive to the Jewish people as the Ishmaelite exile. What does that mean? We've faced terrible oppression. This is going to be even worse. So, like, doesn't that indicate that maybe what they were saying was they just didn't want to see the level of, violence, bloodshed, whatever it is that this is referring to?
In terms of violence and bloodshed, this is nothing compared to what we've seen before.
Right. So what does the Zohar mean?
It means the guilt. We've never felt so guilty.
Who?
The Jewish people.
What do you mean?
The nagging suspicion that maybe it's not our land and maybe it is really theirs. We've never suffered from that before. Never. It was our land and the Babylonians were throwing us out. It was our land and the Romans were throwing us out. It was our land and the Persians wouldn't let us. It was never a question of maybe it's not our land. Only today. Well, yesterday.
So this is psychological oppression, you mean?
Spiritual. How did they pull this off? How did they make us feel guilty for being in Israel? Never happened before.
They have pulled, and by the way, and let's just appreciate this, because when you study, if anyone just does a basic Wikipedia history search, they'll see the Jewish people's relationship with the land. They have pulled off a phenomenal coup in convincing the world that we don't belong there, that we are foreign occupiers. And it's so obvious. And you look at the Palestinian cause, it's so clearly a cynical ploy. I mean, Arafat came from Egypt and the Mufti. It's just so clear. And yet they've done it.
And they've got Jews confused. Well, they until today. In Israel, there are no Jews confused anymore.
Yeah.
Only at Harvard. That is amazing. They have definitely won the PR war.
But you're saying that what's going on, so this is all basically psychological. What Rabbah's referring to, what the Zohar is referring to, is the Jewish people facing psychological warfare and also going through their own psychological battles of having to face up to the flaws in their non-gods or whatever. But okay, so I'm just trying to make sense of that, because how have the Jewish people fallen for this then? How is it that we've lost touch with our, the reality of this, and how do we reclaim this?
It shouldn't be surprising that 2,000 years of oppression can mess with your head. Yes. We're so used to being wrong. We're so used to being the victim that we're more comfortable in that role. That's some serious psychological damage. But the real concern is the spiritual damage. And we are healing. We're getting over it amazingly. And what made us get over it? More oppression. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Well, I think part of it's also because we're realizing that the whole Palestinian cause, before the more hatred we see, the more oppression we see, the more we realize this is not about a legitimate grievance. It's about a hateful ideology, and that allows us to respond.
Yeah, and it's so blatant. It used to be more concealed, more hidden, more obscured by other causes. The Romans were capturing the world, so they captured Israel too. It wasn't so obvious. Now it is so blatant. It's so, yeah. I guess that helps see through it. But also, all the goodness, all the holiness, all the godliness invested in the world over these 2,000 years, it's paying off. It's allowing us to see the truth. We always knew it. Now we're starting to see it. It's becoming visual. And that's what Rabbi said. I don't mind hearing about it. I don't mind it happening. But the seeing of it, that's going to be so painful. When it becomes so clear that it becomes visual. And that's the only thing that's lacking right now. We know the truth. We got it. We got it. We just don't see it.
It's so interesting because I'm actually looking at the quote now in the Talmud, and then after we have the Rabbah quote, Rav Yosef says, "Let Moshiach come," and it basically says something a little bit crude that and maybe you can help explain this. It says something like, "I'll be privileged to sit in the shadow of his donkey's excrement," and I'm seeing a commentary in this saying that what it means is I'm willing to undergo all the pain and disgrace associated with his arrival, which sounds to kind of chime with what you're saying. This is a psychological kind of sense of disgrace and shame of that will be experienced. Is that what he's talking about?
Yes. It's like eat dirt, but get to the truth.
Mm. But really, that's more painful for a sensitive soul to see someone having to go through ideological change as opposed to seeing all the terrible bloodshed and agony and violence and screaming and warfare that Jews have faced for centuries. Really? I mean, I kind of feel like I would rather go through a psychological, ideological change than go through all that physical suffering.
I think just by the nature of it, a person who is totally disillusioned with everything he believed in wishes he were dead.
Mm.
He got no reason to live anymore, and that's part of the danger. You undermined your life, and now your life has become meaningless, or worse than meaningless. If the body suffers, we can always justify it with it's good for the soul. It's just the body. But when the soul is devastated, well, then the body is also at risk, and there's no gain. There's no upside.
Right, it's a double whammy.
Yeah.
So let's finish on a positive note. What can we do to help ease this process, to ease this transition for everyone, so it's more smooth?
And let's go back to what we started with. This is about God's need, not ours. So wake up in the morning and ask God, what can I do to help your plan succeed? Because your plan is essential to you, not optional. So failure is not an option. What can I, with my limited resources and my limited abilities and talents, what can I do for you? Which mitzvah? And I'll do it. And that will shift the attention from creator, from creation to creator. That's all we need. That's all that's missing. It's the final showdown. Is it us or is it him? No more ambiguity. I mean, look at how painful it is for some Orthodox people who can't make peace with the idea that God actually needs this.
Right.
It's devastating. Their whole life philosophy, their whole dedication and virtue, and we're telling them that all of that was just selfishness. They had never served God properly at all. Wow, wow, wow. That's painful.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like, when you first introduced this idea to me, there was a lot of pushing back and thinking through, and then took about a week of just sitting with it. It's an idea that I kind of been taught for 10 years around that. And then afterwards we spoke again, and it was like a couple of hours of like really and it sunk in. But then it was a really big deal, and really, paradigm shifting, and brought up a huge amount of emotion. And that's just for someone who was only introduced to opposites to the ideas to the contrary just a few years ago. So yeah, I guess I really do have to. We do like these paradigm shifts really are going to be. They're going to be big.
Yeah. And you got to be compassionate about it. There are people who were brought up with this all their lives, 50, 60 years. And they paid a steep price for it. They gave up a lot to keep
Yeah.
the mitzvahs and to.
But their mitzvahs aren't. It's not like what they did is not. It's still infinitely valuable, right?
Correct.
So it's not. It's not like a life's work is down the tubes.
Yeah, there's no regret for the mitzvahs, but the embarrassment.
But I didn't feel any embarrassment about this. I felt, okay, this is what I was taught and thought made sense, and now it doesn't. And so, I'm a learning, growing human being, and so I'm going to go through a shift now, and I have the rest of eternity to improve.
So you could say that because you were the student. What does the teacher say?
Well,
Oh yeah, I thought,
doesn't every teacher need to be a student as well?
yes. But then the thought that you misled 30 students every year for the last 25 years that you've been
Mm,
teaching. That's
mm,
pretty painful. That's pretty
yeah,
painful.
yeah.
How do you call them all up and say, I take it back. I take it back.
Well, I actually had a video on JTV, a 5-minute animated video. I invested quite a bit into it, and it's all about why did God create the world, and it was basically saying can't be because we need it. Got quite a lot of views, but yeah, I took it down, after I'd given this thought. But obviously, this is nothing like decades of teaching students and everything. But ultimately, is there not a sense in which we need to say God guides our journey and who we meet and the ideas that are introduced to us as well? And so there has to be some extent to which we say this was meant to be.
It was meant to be, but now that you hear the way it is supposed to be, why are you resisting?
Mm.
Why are you trying to salvage your dignity at the expense of Torah and God and truth?
Right, but what I'm saying is, if you're honest, there doesn't need to be a dignity salvaging, because if you're just trying to be honest and doing your best, then okay, so you made an error, and now you move on.
Quite an error, because you based your whole life on this.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Sacrificed everything. You were willing to live in New York for that. And you could have been living in Arizona. Yeah, it is. It is painful.
Hmm.
I've actually heard people say, "Look, I don't know. I don't know whether you're right or wrong, but why are you rocking my boat? I've got this comfortable lifestyle. I'm doing good. I behave myself. I do mitzvahs. Don't upset the apple cart. Don't make me rethink everything. I'm too old for that." I said, "Okay, I'm sorry."
Okay, well, here's an interesting question actually. Then, what's more important? Is it the motivation for the mitzvah, or is it the mitzvah itself? In terms of this person saying don't rock the cart, is it more important that, if someone's doing mitzvah, but they do it because they think it's for their benefit, but they're still doing the mitzvah? So which matters more?
It's a very good question. And if they would say that, there would be no argument. Look, I'm doing my best, and the best I can do is do it for the reward. Okay. But to make a whole protest, no, God doesn't need it, he can't need it, it never meant to be. Well, what are you doing that for?
Right.
Where are you trying to minimize our connection to God when you can maximize it?
But I'm asking, which part is more important? The act, or the intention and thought and purpose of the mitzvah?
I think what's most important is continuing to grow. Don't get stuck.
Mm.
If there's room for improvement, so accept it, improve, grow. Let the next generation grow. Don't create that artificial limit to how far you can go and how close you can get. A relationship can always get deeper, always.
But I'm saying, would God rather an imperfect mitzvah, like in terms of how it's executed, but it's done for him, versus someone, like, for example, you speak about that guy keeping a Pesach Seder, but he didn't have anything, didn't really know how to do it, but he did it because he wanted to do something for God, or to do a mitzvah in its complete halachic perfection, but it's for the reward?
It's a very good question. The only good answer is do both. Do the mitzvah and do it the right way. Good intentions and good actions, that debate can go on forever. But it shouldn't be a debate, because there should be both. The good intention improves the action, and the action leads to good intention. So would you rather your wife loves you but can't be bothered to make you dinner? Or would you rather she make you dinner but do not love you? I don't know. Depends how hungry you are.
Yeah, no, I get that. Okay.
This was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rabbi, for your time. It's always so great to dig deeper into all these issues. And as I said at the start, I have a very, very long list that I always, whenever I think of something, I'd love to ask that. It's added to the list, and we'll continue to go through more.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.